Hello, I'm Alison from Bag Lady Bird Learn to Sew, and today I'm going to be showing you how to use shearing elastic. So shearing elastic is an absolutely fabulous technique. I love it. It's really simple, and it's good to use in replacement of elastic in loads of different garments. I've seen it used in the Tilly and the Buttons Bettine dress, in elastic waist trousers, in kids clothes. You can just make a sheared top completely out of it, or you can shear the top of the dress, anything like that. It's absolutely fabulous, and it's really simple to do as well. So without further ado, I am going to take you through step by step how to.
Okay, so this is our bobbin of shearing elastic. You can get this in white and black mainly, but you can also sometimes get other colours. But because it's on the reverse side of your fabric, you won't really see it. So long as you're using a dark one for a dark fabric, a black one for a dark fabric, and a light one, a white one for a light fabric, you should be alright. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to put the bobbin onto the spool pin of the machine, like so. And then what we're going to do, instead of using the machine's automatic bobbin winder, we're going to just wind this by hand. So let's just get this released. That's it. So what we want to do is just get yourself started, wrap it around a few times, and then you are starting to wind, and you're putting a little bit of tension as you go. So you want it slightly stretched but not too stretched. I'm just going to cut off now that little tail because we don't want it getting in the way later. Go. And you're just keeping that tension as you wind. You're trying to wind it as evenly as possible onto the bobbin. But just keep going. So I'm just sort of pulling it like that. So relaxed it would be like that, but I'm pulling it like that as I'm winding. And you get into a rhythm, you get into a flow, and it becomes relatively easy. Because the shearing elastic is actually quite thick, you can't fit very much on a bobbin, so it's not like winding a full bobbin of thread. You're just winding a bobbin of elastic, so it's thicker, so it doesn't take as many meters. So I'm going to fill it till it's full because I don't want it to run out part way through sewing a row of shearing. That is something that can happen, and it's a bit annoying when it does happen. So I always say just keep an eye on how full your bobbin is. So keeping your bobbin, keeping the spool on the spool pin just means that it's not spinning around on the floor or doing something crazy, getting tangled up or collecting fluff or whatever. So we're full on there. Not as ram full as you could be, but pretty full. So now what we need to do is place this into the machine. Inserting the bobbin into the top loading machine. So you're just placing it in there, the thread comes down the left hand side. Just allow the thread to sit in that little loop and then hold your plastic bobbin and pull the elastic round to the side. It does resist a bit because it's elastic and it's a bit thicker, but if you follow the steps as you would do for inserting a normal bobbin, just be a little bit careful that it does go into the tensioner, and the tensioner is that little metal bit there. So here is the piece of fabric that I am going to do the shearing on. The eagle-eyed of you may recognise this fabric. It is the same as the little bloomers that I've just made for my niece. It's part of the same dress. Unfortunately, this bit has got a stain on it. Otherwise, I would probably be using that for something for my nieces as well. But we'll use it, I like to use when there's a contrast to the pocket that's been unpicked. I like the contrast of it, but we're going to use up the stained piece just to be a bit more sustainable with our fabrics. Okay, so we've got nice long thread tails here. You need to make sure that you give the elastic a good tug and that it doesn't sort of ping back inside the spool underneath the machine. So I'm going to sew my first row of shearing here. So I'm starting close to the edge. So we've got a lumpy seam, a thick seam here, and that will not shear very well. So we're moving away from that. So I'm just going to line the edge of my presser foot up with the edge of this row of stitching. So that will be my first starting point, and it'll keep us nice and even. So here goes. Needle down to start with, and then off we go. Oh, it helps if you switch power on. Ta-da! That is row 1 done. I'm going to raise the needle and pull the threads out. Again, the elastic will try and ping back in. Just make sure you've got a long enough end to tie off on your existing piece of work and a long enough end tail here that you can tie off at the beginning of your next row of stitching. So each time we sew a row of stitching, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the back. I've not cut my thread. So go to the back, and we're just going to pull the elastic until the thread from the top comes through. So your thread is always on the top and your elastic is underneath. So pull that through, and then you're going to tie this in a really secure knot, because what you don't want to happen is for your elastic to become unstretched because it just slips out. So you need to make sure that each end is being securely knotted before you go any further. So I am knotting each end before and after I sew. So you can see the shearing effect has started to happen already. So I'm just going to do the same on the other end. We're just going to pull that through and knot that off. So again, really secure knot, because you don't want to lose your elastic, and cut your threads. Okay, so we're ready for our second row of shearing. So the second row, I'm going to line up the edge of my presser foot with the first row of the pink stitching that I have sewn. So I'll just line myself up here, presser foot down, needle down, double checking I've got long enough thread tails, needle down into the fabric, and then when you sew you just want to stretch out the elastic, and you're keeping the edge of the foot level with the pink stitching, your first row of stitching. So that gives you a good distance between your stitches. So pull in again, so you've got a long enough piece of elastic. You can see I'm pulling way out and it comes back to about 15 centimetres, but I'm leaving enough that I can pull my threads through. So I'm going to now tie off my ends and sew another 4 rows of shearing, and I'm going to do that and come back to you, and then I'll show you when the magic happens. Okay, so I've done a nice 7 rows of shearing elastic on here. Tied each one off at the end with a nice little knot. If you're sewing a seam down here, you want to make sure that you have started your shearing in the seam allowance, so that when you sew the seam it's going to catch that in as well. So now what we're going to do, I've got a nice hot steamy iron, lots of steam, and what we're going to do is we're just going to hover the steam iron over the shearing elastic, and what that does, it sucks it back in, so it increases the elasticity again. So we're not actually touching the elastic.
Okay, so that got a bit steamy, but we now have our fully sheared piece of fabric. Now this fabric is, I would say it's a shirt-weight denim, so a very lightweight denim or quite a heavyweight chambray. And I have got 7 rows of shearing here, and there we go. You can see it from the back. So the steam just helps shrink it back on itself and rejuvenate the elastic, and this is what you get. So the piece, before we sheared it, measured 54 centimetres. It now measures about 23. So you're kind of looking at about halving the length of your piece with your shearing elastic. It depends how much tension you put on when you're winding that bobbin, how stretched, how much it sucks it in. But around 50% is a good indicator, a good aim, if that's what you're going for. The more rows of shearing you do, it doesn't get any smaller, but the elastic gets stronger because there's more rows of elastic. It would still shrink to the same size, but the strength behind it would be more. So you could use this to make a little top, not obviously this piece, but there are loads of applications. I'll do a couple of photos of things that have been or could be used with shearing elastic, and hope you have some fun with it. Just don't be scared to play about with it before you do it. The lighter the fabric, the bigger the effect. The more rows you do, the stronger the elastic. You can use it to replace waistline elastic. You could do it in sleeve cuffs. You could do it in waistlines, even in hem cuffs. If you want like the little bloomers that I made, you could have done it around the bottom of the hem of the bloomers. If you want an elasticated cuff on the ankle or on the leg. So there are loads of different options and applications for shearing elastic. It's an absolutely fab technique, and don't forget, when you're hovering over, when you're ironing it, you're not pressing the iron onto the elastic, which would melt it. You're on a hot heat with a lot of steam and you're hovering over it. So that hover effect, it's the steam that does the magic and shrinks it all back. And it's quite exciting to watch, quite fun to do. But yes, you need to give it a go yourself. Let me know how you get on. Please do share in the comments if you've had a go at this, and let me know what you've made. just a few top tips to remember. Just make sure that you increase your stitch length. So I forgot to mention that at the beginning. Increase your stitch length to the longest stitch length, so 4 on these machines. Some people have a stitch length of 5 as their maximum, so if you want to go up to a 5, just do a couple of samples to check it out. But that just means you your stitch length is not too short on the elastic, and you don't need to alter the tension at all on your machine. I did all this with the same tension. It's the tension of the elastic as you wind it that gives you the effect. You shouldn't need to mess about with your sewing machine tension at all to get this effect. So happy shearing, people!